What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Sunday conversation. My name is Austin Florick, and my wife is not here yet, and that's okay. Um, but anyway, she's coming. And I'm gonna get this going. We are a little bit late today. There we go. But that's all right. So anyway, today we're going to be talking about codependency. What does that mean? How does that show up in our lives? What can we do about it? And how does it relate to God anyway? This podcast is a godly conversation. So we got to tie it all back together, you know? So, anyway, we're talking about codependency. And the reason that we're bringing this up is because it's quite a doozy. It's pretty annoying, in fact. And oftentimes, a lot of people might get stuck in it and not actually realize that they're stuck in it. And when that happens, um, it can be draining, and it can like actually make your life really hard when this is like when you're caught up in codependent behavior. And especially if you're not aware of it, that it's going on, it can be draining your energy, and you're like not even realizing it. Like it can be putting you in situations that aren't like super awesome. And yeah, so we're going to talk about that. And Faith and I have been together for a little over a year now, maybe even a year and a half. And so we have experienced codependency together, and it's not very fun. But I know for myself, um, and I can let her speak for herself if she ever gets on here. But I know for myself, codependency can show up in a lot of different ways. And this like often looks different for everybody, and it can show up in different ways, like meaning like what you do in your codependent behavior, like which actions you take can actually um, they can vary, but depending on which ones you're doing, they can affect you in different ways as well. So, oh, look what we have here. Wow, look who decided to join. So, we have been talking about codependency for the last 3 minutes. And so I've introduced myself, and I talked a little bit about you. And I was talking about how we have had codependency in our relationship. And I was just starting to get into how codependency shows up differently for everybody. And like its effects vary. And it's like, again, it's just really annoying because, again, when you're in like codependent situations, it's like it's toxic. It feels horrible. It doesn't feel good, and a lot of times people don't really realize that they're even in that situation, right? It's like, imagine, you might have heard this metaphor before, but like imagine you're wearing really tight shoes, right? And then you take them off, or like you're wearing your work boots all day, right? And then at the end of the day you take them off, and like how good that feels, that when that pressure is released, right? And that's kind of what happens when you move out of codependency and into like a more secure or functional type of relationship style. And yeah, it makes life a lot smoother. So anyway, Faith, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm having a hard time with your connection. It's like cutting in and out. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Austin. One moment. Let me swap my Wi-Fi.
Okay.
All right, I was on the wrong Wi-Fi network, so I should be good now.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Hi everyone. I am Faith Florick, Austin's wife.
Anything else, babe? We're talking about codependency. Do you want to add to the conversation at all?
Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking when you were sharing that codependency shows up when, when you don't trust yourself or God enough to like get what you need from God, essentially. So that's when you were sharing. I just felt like God was telling me that.
Okay.
Like a lot of people look for their soulmate or their husband or their spouse to complete something within themselves, and that's where they get into codependency because they're trying to get the other person to meet all the needs that they don't have in their life. And instead of like finding those needs within God, they find it in the other person. And it's not that our spouses and our partners, they're going to fulfill needs, but when we are in right relationship with God first, then a lot of codependency issues will fall away. And in our relationship, especially in the beginning, God, like the Lord, had to help me with that and be like, you cannot cling to Austin like he's your God. Like, you have to cling to me like I'm your God. And then your marriage will sort itself out.
Yeah. Yep. Codependency definitely is like what happens when basically it's like an unspoken agreement between two individuals who are in a relationship. And basically, the unspoken agreement is around if you take care of my needs, I'll take care of your needs. And so basically, they're just like taking care of each other's needs and calling it love. And yeah. And so we've fallen into this before. Like, and we deal with this. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, for me personally, I've been in like quite a few relationships that didn't go very well. Most of my relationships didn't go very well. I think that's probably why I'm not with those people anymore, is because they didn't go very well. um, and so that has kind of had an effect on the way that I show up in my relationships today and what I do. And so, you know, there's different relationship styles. And so we have like codependency. We have there's other styles as well that we've learned to call aloof, which is where like if you're in a relationship and the other person doesn't really want to like engage with you, or they want to try to like they're there, like they're present physically, but emotionally they're withdrawn, and you can't really talk to them because they don't really want to like engage and stuff like that. And then we also have um, like dominant and submissive, which is like where one individual is the dominant, which means that they like take control of everything, and then the submissive is like the person who just like does whatever they say. Basically, it's like one is just like it's like a dictator, it's like one just completely has authority over the other person and they just like have to do it. And some people are like those kind of relationships. And then there's also like secure attachment, anxious attachment, avoidant, and anxious avoidant, and stuff like that. There's a book called Attached that Faith and I read when we were in New Orleans, and it discussed some of this stuff. And we found ourselves in that book quite a bit. I found myself to be an anxiously attached person. And so this is where this comes back to the codependency of like, so what does that actually mean, and how does that show up in my life? And so there's like moments where like I'm looking to Faith to like deliver something to me, like to take care of me in some way, right? And so this, I think this comes from like obviously the way we're raised up. um our parents take care of us a specific way, and sometimes like they overlook certain things, or like there's no rule book to parenting, right? So we're not mad at our parents, but sometimes things happen where they are either like they either support you too much or they don't support you enough, or sometimes they support you in one area and not another, or just because of like their strengths and stuff. And so um, that's when you start to look into your partner for the things that you feel like you're missing. And it's because like there's a certain place where like your partner can like fill a hole for you that you feel that you have, like something's missing and they need to like be there to support you in that way. And when they do that, it fills that hole. And so when they're filling that hole, that is like it makes you feel better, but they're doing something that you should be able to do with yourself and or with God. You get what I'm saying? And so you're seeking for your partner to take care of something. And so for an example, right, is like I'll just be honest. One of the things that I've dealt with a lot in my life is like money, and also like where to stay, because there's been times where like I haven't had my own place, and so I would have to find someone to live with, and so people would like fill that hole for me of not having somewhere to live. And also having money, there's been times where like I would need money, and so I would be codependent towards people to like provide for me financially as well. um, so I'm gonna let Faith jump in here and share a little bit about that. Do you have any thing to add on what I talked about with the different type like relationship styles? Do you want to name your own, and can you kind of share just a little bit about like how it shows up for you?
Yeah, I definitely want to also add that a lot of the relationship styles they say that it comes from your family growing up, and um, it's like a safety mechanism that you create in order to find safety in relationships. And so you'll come into your adult relationships with the same mentality that you approached your family growing up in your parents. And so, especially in the first 7 years of your life when your brain's developing, um, like it develops until you're like 25 to 30, but the first 7 years is really like when you're individuating or, becoming your own person. And I would say that growing up, I was definitely codependent with my family. Like, I have four siblings, and so we are a family of seven growing up, and we had a bit of a interesting, childhood story, being adopted and stuff out of foster care. And, um, it was definitely something that my adoptive mom, my mom, was the one who really, did everything. And she had a friend and her parents help raise us, but I didn't grow up with like a dad. And so for me, that's been something that showed up for us is like, definitely can be dominant. I can definitely be dominant. I can be avoidant. But I would say that my tendency is to try and control the situation. Um, and then if I'm not controlling the situation, I'm being avoidant because I don't um, trust people with my emotions. From the military, like you're trained, you're specifically trained to stuff your emotions down and never let anyone see your weak side. So I would say that those two things interfere the most with me cultivating relationships and friendships. And I'd say that's actually why now, I don't feel like I really have close friends, and I've alienated myself from my family. everything like that, just because of what I've been through, and it's been safer, you know. So our relationship, I think we've kind of gone through like all the different styles, and when we find ourselves in a secure, functional relationship, it's great. But sometimes it's like, oh, we're being codependent, or you know, I'm being controlling, or you're being controlling, or I'm being avoidant. Um, yeah, it's just very interesting how complex relationships are, and um, yeah, how how much it affects our life and also affects our relationship with God too. Just last thing I'll add before I hand the mic back over is like, I even show up that way with God. You know, it's not even with Him. Like, I'm not even in a functional relationship. It's, you know, I'm either trying to dominate Him, which obviously is like hilarious because He's God and I'm not. And I'm like, okay, like I'm trying to tell God how to be God, and I don't know anything. I'm like, I was just journaling to him, telling him that he sucks. And I'm like, all right, God doesn't suck, but like, that's my relationship right now in this moment, is judging God and being like, I don't think you're doing it right. And it's like, not true. It's not true at all. It's all lies. But feeling like I know better than everyone. And that's where the control comes from, is just thinking that I have the best solution. And um, if I were in charge, everything would be perfect. Um, yeah. So it's not true, but that's what my ego and my demons tell me. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, when we control things and we think they're perfect, they're just perfect to us. But that's because we put it into our order and not God's order, you know. And that doesn't really take into account all of like our dysfunction, our strengths, our weaknesses, like what's actually good for us. Um, we set things up in a specific order that might feel good to us, but again, it doesn't really serve like the bigger picture. You know, it's just more about like, if I can control the situation, then I'm going to get something out of this. And it's comfortability. It's like ease of mind. It's like, it's like a boost in pride too, because it's like I set the standard for this. I set the tone for this, you know, and it makes us feel like it makes us feel good. It makes us feel like if we can control something, that everything's under control and people can see us looking good and see us having things under control. And that feels good to be observed in that way as well, you know? Um, yeah. And then when we're in a relationship and we're trying to control every aspect of things, when we're in a relationship, what happens is basically like when you're okay, all right, God is being very direct with me right now. When you're by yourself, right? You're not in a relationship and you're by yourself. You we can hide. If someone is in a like no relationships, they live by themselves or whatever, right? Or even if they live with family, but they like have their own space and they do their own thing, right? And they're not in a relationship like that, right? They can feel comfortable because they get to control their world their own way, and that makes them feel good because they're like, okay, well, I'm just in my own energy, I'm doing my own thing, I'm creating the way I want to create, like I'm organizing the way I want to organize, I'm painting the walls the way I want to paint them, and I don't have to ask anybody which way to move the brush strokes, you know. And I don't have to like make sure that I can two people agree, like I'm just myself. And then you get into a relationship where two people now are merging their consciousnesses in bringing themselves into each other's world, right? And so like when Faith and I met, we didn't know each other, right? That's how you meet people. You don't know them and then you know them and then you guys, that's how you guys met. And so just being silly, but so I was in Ohio, she's in San Francisco, which my shirt says San Francisco, by the way. Sorry, I had to. Anyway, what happens is we start to merge our consciousness, our identities, the way that we view the world, the way that we question things, the way that we set things up, right? And she's living in her own house by herself. I'm living with family at the time, but I'm doing my own thing, right? And so when we merged, we had our own way of doing things. We had our own way of thinking about things. And when we came together, this is when we realized that this was where the codependent part was because we realized, and in the beginning it was really messy because we didn't know each other that well, right? And there was like a lot of different things and it was really messy. Like our thought processes were messy together. And actually I was like really weak, like weak spoken, like soft spoken or whatever, and she was really loud. I remember, quick story. I remember when we first met, when we were at the hotel and we were in the pool, and um, we were at the Rio Hotel in Las Vegas, and there was this guy in the pool, and she was trying to like just talk to him and explain to him why we were there or whatever, because she likes to talk to everybody. I'm picking on her, but the thing was is when we first met, she just was she was dominating the conversation with the man, that man, and then I couldn't even talk because like there was just I like couldn't raise my voice up enough to like try to speak over her or interject myself or like say anything. I just couldn't. And so we've had to shift that like a lot. And so like codependency would look like me telling her, hey, I am more soft spoken than you. I need you to change for me, right? So that I feel better about myself. That's codependency. But to be functional or secure would be, I'm grown, I can take care of myself, and she can be whoever she is, and I can learn to speak up and say what I need to say. And trust me, I have. um, and so, anyway, your consciousness merge, right? And you guys figure each other out. And then you start to realize, oh, I I want this person to validate me. I want this person to make me feel good because I don't feel good about myself as it is. And so instead of asking God or instead of checking things out in an emotional space and with myself or with a counselor or something like that, I'm going to go to her and ask her to do something different to make me feel better because I feel insecure. And that's codependency. And that's what we're talking about today because we've dived into this and we see how it affects ourselves with our relationship. We see how like our relationships with others have been affected. We realize that it's not fun to to like it's like to need someone to be there in a specific way so that you can function properly, you know. um because we should be able to do things for ourselves, right? And this is where we're going to talk about this because this is like there's a fine line between being codependent and needing each other, and on the other side is where we rely on each other and we can cover each other's weaknesses, and we do that out of love and grace, not out of need and desire, like in desperation, you know. So Faith, what do you have to say about all that?
Yeah, one thing that I was thinking about it is for using the speaking example in the pool, right? You were saying it's codependent for you to make me change, but there is this element of being self-aware and like looking at yourself and realizing like am I doing something that goes against what I want? And am I aware of those behaviors? Because odds are you are. Like, we all do this. Everyone does this. There's something you want, and then you directly do something that sabotages it. Not that it's your fault. Like, that's part of the whole, like, sin nature from my perspective, from a Christian perspective, is naturally you want to protect yourself and control the situation. And so, for example, for me, I wanted to be married. I wanted to find who I was going to marry. I wanted to have a relationship. And even though I didn't know it was going to be Austin at the time, um, I wasn't even like allowing others space in my life. So I wasn't even giving him space to speak. So um, it was a balance of still being my own person and also changing behavior that needs to shift in order to become the person that I want to be and allow people to be in my life with me. Yeah. And I think that something that when you were talking about hiding, you don't see those behaviors until you have someone in your life, because God God will mirror the world back to you. He will mirror your world back to you to let you know, like, you're being like this right now. You know, like, you'll see it. Like, you cut someone off in traffic and then someone cuts you off. God's like, how's that feel? You just did it. Like, is that how you want to be right now? And you're like, nope, sorry, you know, and just like that stuff is not coincidence. That is God literally pointing a mirror at you and saying, look. And Austin, in the beginning of our relationship, had to do that a lot, and I couldn't see it for a long time. He was like, you're doing X, Y, and Z, and I'd be like, no, I'm not. Like, just I could not see it. And it took a while, and finally God would like drop this veil and be like, I would see it and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I am not who I think I am. Like, I don't act the way I think I act. I'm actually not that good of a person. I'm not that compassionate. I'm not that caring. At least, you know, and I, in my mind, I think I am. And then like I like look at my behavior and I'm like, well, my behavior doesn't show that at all. So obviously I'm not. And then having to go through that death inside, dying to yourself and being like, I'm not who I want to be right now. How do I become that person? And I think that's why a lot of relationships fall apart, is because we won't look at our stuff and say, I messed up. So, I know for me, that's what kept me from having close friendships, being with my family, having successful relationships, is being willing to admit when I am wrong, apologizing, and making it right. I still have a tendency of apologizing and then immediately still pointing the finger and being like, but you were wrong too, you know, like trying to make it okay that I did something wrong. Because even though like everyone is doing something in a fight, it doesn't mean you point out what they're doing wrong. You just take your accountability and your side. Like in Celebrate Recovery, which is a Christian recovery group just for anything you're struggling with in life, anything. Like, people go there for anger, you know, and they say keep your side of the street clean. Like, what is on your side of the street? Like, you don't go to Sally's house and clean up Sally's house. You clean your house up. And then you let Sally deal with her stuff, and you just trust that God's gonna clean up their house when it's time. So. So, I mean, that's what comes up for me.
Yeah, I'm just sitting with that for a minute. Yeah. For me, codependency shows up in a lot of different ways. And like what Faith was talking about is like when you're by yourself and you're doing things your own way, you're kind of just blind to it because you're just doing your own thing. You don't like have someone mirroring back to you, or like guiding you or supporting you, unless you have that, right? But um a lot of people don't have, like, just have life coaches to help them with their life. Everybody wants to be a life coach, but nobody wants to have a life coach. um so when we get around people who have done work, like inner work, or can, like, the thing is like, when you're around other people and you're showing up like in a dysfunctional kind of way, other people can see it. And what I mean by that is, like, I've smoked so much weed in my life, right? And for such a long time I was like, well, no one's going to know that I'm high, even though I walk in the building and I smell, my eyes are red, I'm slurring my speech, I'm talking funny, like I'm not all the way present. And I'm like, oh, they won't know because it's inside of me, right? Like the high is inside of me. So how could someone outside of me know? But it's like, that's the thing, is like, people can see you and they can see your dysfunction. Like they can see like the parts of you that are not working properly, and so when you get around someone and you want to get into like a committed relationship, or like keep a person around, make a friend, make a lover, right? Then you have this person staring at you and saying like, why are you doing that? And then you're like, wait, what am I doing? And you're looking at yourself and you're like, oh goodness gracious me, I'm doing this. This is how I'm acting, this is how I'm showing up. And then, yeah, and then it gives you an opportunity to check yourself in a way that you wouldn't have done before, because you were being by yourself. And And so, codependency, we are basically just trying to validate each other and complete each other, when in fact we're already whole and complete in ourselves. And um and so we start to look at this, and we start to say, okay, like, if I'm taking care of myself, then what is the point of the relationship? And from that place, we get into the other side of this, is like a more functional tone of, instead of needing out of desperation someone to like correct themselves to make you feel better, right? How do we show up in relationships instead? And instead, we show up functionally, we show up secure. And what this is basically where two people are whole and complete, and they feel like themselves. They take care of themselves, but they want to be around this other person. And so, because of that, they have now merged. They're taking care of themselves, but also adding to the collective, like the group, the family, like the pair. And so when both people are adding, then it starts to get like better and bigger, and there's more love inside of it, and then it's like contained better. And when you're in a relationship like this is when you can start to rely on another person, because you start to build trust, right? You build trust in the relationship, and then you can rely on the other person, and you guys cover each other's weaknesses, you cover each other's backs. And from that, you start to show up more functional. And you start to show up more functionally. And um and the relationship starts to feel better. It starts to thrive, because you guys are taking care of each other, not out of desperation because they need it, because two people are stronger together. Two minds are greater than one, you know? And if you want to take it to God too, what I've also heard is where two people gather to talk about God or Jesus, then he's there. You know? And it's like a connection. And so when Faith and I are together, or when you and your person are together, to the viewer, if you two are whole and complete yourself and you come together out of love and you cover each other, and God, you're talking about God. God is part of the conversation. God is covering you too. And it's like a three-way system. Faith, do you want to talk about that a little bit more? Because I know you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, there's a scripture that says a three-stranded cord is not easily broken, and that third strand is God. And when God is in the center, particularly like the living God, he has a structure. And there's this saying about in a marriage, speak specifically about a Christian marriage, but it's both partners are equal, but their roles are not equivalent. And so there's this whole dynamic, right, where God needs to be in the middle of the relationship so that you can both be functional, like you were sharing, Austin. Like, I'm getting my needs met by God, and then there are obviously things that we do for each other in a marriage, but God, like, helps you understand like what you need to get from your partner and like what you need to be giving to your partner. Because if you fill your cup up with God, like, he's known as the living water. So when you're overflowing with like the presence of God, um it's a lot easier to go to your partner and give to them and say, "Oh, like how can I sacrificially serve them?" And when I say sacrificially serve them, I don't mean that you make yourself suffer, but like how can I put their happiness before mine? Because what Jesus showed was like he served, right? He was always serving. Like the 3 years of his ministry, he like did not rest really. He was just like always healing and always ministering. And he had to go away in the morning, and he did go, like, actually could take time with the Father. I'm like remembering, he's reminding me like he did go rest, but like it was a balance, and he did rely on resting with the Father. And he was also like very good at resting with the Father always, like, even if he wasn't alone under a fig tree like praying to the Father, like he was always resting. And there's this thing of resting in the presence of God all the time. It's like important to get that one-on-one time, absolutely, like that is so 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 important. um but then there's this thing of like bringing him with you, like it's not just about being with God for 5 minutes a day, it's about learning to have him with you at all times, because if he's with you, then it's a lot easier to know like what do I need from my partner right now. Do I actually need anything, or am I actually here to give something? um because the kingdom of God is all about serving, so it's just finding that as well. um but I would say one more thing too is it's not about like being a slave to another person, right? Like that's not the point. You shouldn't be like, this person's, eating their potato chips on the couch and they don't do anything and they're just drinking beers all day and you're doing everything, and like that, you're serving them sacrificially, but they're not serving you back. Like there's a point where it's like, okay, like there's a point where you know what, you need to draw some boundaries and like take care of yourself, and let them kind of deal with the consequences of their own actions. So um, it's just trusting that God is working in every person, and if you have right relationship with him, then it's going to be a lot easier to have right relationship with other people too. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Um, I used to watch this lady on YouTube, and she would say that like she would start her videos off like every time, and she would say something like, "This is a spiritual game, but it's masked as a relationships game or something like that." And she was just talking about like life, just in general. Like there's relationships between you and everything. Like even you and that water bottle, you have a relationship between that because you have an opinion, you have a feeling about it. It thinks about you too. I'm kidding. But like, so yeah. And then, so when you're working on relationships, you want to work on your relationship with God, right? Because when you have a strong relationship with God, then you have a strong relationship with your other people, because you're in alignment. It's like you're free, right? Because if you can be right with God, then you're like, your heart is more open. Like it's just like you're just more of yourself. Like our minds work better, our hearts are more open, like our bodies just work better when you're just in alignment. And so it literally just like rubs off on everything, having a relationship with God. Like it changes your relationships with everything, is what I'm saying. And and yeah, I think that's really important. um and so, just kind of wrapping this up though. Yeah, so like codependency, right, is what we talked about. And being in a codependent relationship can cause friction. It can cause a lot of turmoil. It can cause a lot of nasty feelings, especially like, you need something from your partner. Imagine if they don't give it to you, right? Like that can cause some feelings. That could start fights, all kind of stuff. And um and so, like, what do we do instead? And we started talking about how we show up from a place of fullness. We seek God first, and then we support our partner. Like we cover their weakness, we cover their backs, we cover them, just like God is covering us. And if we're covering each other, then we're continually feeding the system, like we're feeding the family, and it's making it better, because the more time, love, attention, TLC, all that stuff that you put into nurturing the connection and nurturing the family, the better off it's going to be. And we just heard at church this morning, the pastor said, to like speak love over your wives more than criticism. And I'm just realizing, like, yeah, like that's it's such a simple thing, but I know for myself that I have overlooked that. And there's definitely times where I criticize Faith. And just doing that doesn't feed the relationship. It makes it worse, and it makes it harder, and it makes things complicated, and makes people frustrated and upset. And nobody wants to hang out with someone who's being, like not feeding the connection. Why would I want to have friends with someone or have a partner with someone that is sabotaging the connection and not nurturing it? Why would anybody want that? You know, and so we just need to remember that. And, if like we want to have these people in our lives, then continue to nurture that connection, continue to love on it. And sometimes loving in a relationship means setting clear boundaries, which can be saying no to things. Sometimes saying no brings you guys closer. And having clear boundaries is really important, because it's like setting up the structure of the relationship. It's like if her and I are married, which we are, right? And we merge our finances, for example. If her and I have a different opinion on the way that we handle our finances, but we think that we're going to do it together as a team, but we view finances differently, that's not going to work. There's no way for that to work. And so that's where it's like getting clear and like sitting down, coming up with an arrangement together that we both agree on, that God agrees on, and then creating a system, a structure. This is the boundary. This is what we do with when we're in this situation. We do this. I'll pay this, you pay that. We work things out. We create the structure, the system, because when you have the system, you rely on the structure and the system. You don't need to rely on your own self knowledge to figure everything out every time. You set the system, you operate by the system. Now you've just taken out any reason why you guys would argue or be upset about this specific thing, because you just made an agreement that this is how it's going to work forever, unless you make a decision to change it. And then you can just fall back and rely on the system, so that you guys don't have to, because it's already agreed upon, it already works. You know what I'm saying? And so from there, taking that example and moving it into other areas of your life, you start to find that you create structures for different areas, and it brings the relationship closer and it makes it stronger, because you're creating like bridges of communication, and you're creating bridges of just like agreement and consent and just like love and what's the word I'm missing? God. Just to create those structures, or just to create all of that, is it makes the relationship work better. Having strong boundaries and clear principles that both people agree to, and when you start to feed into that, and you start to give to that instead of taking out of insecurity, the relationship changes and it starts to grow and it starts to get better.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I'd like to share one more thing that God is showing me.
For sure.
Um, so before I started following Jesus, I didn't really understand existence. Like I really thought, like I'm like, oh, like I mean, I won't even say understand it now. Like I definitely don't have all the answers by any means, but I really thought it was, like we're just here to experience life, and we're all just like, different manifestations of God, experiencing God, the whole like pantheism, New Age, Hindu, like really, I really subscribe to all that. And coming to Christ now and getting a different worldview from like the Bible and stuff, I've been like looking and I'm like, oh, okay, like as a Christian now, accepting the whole sin nature and the fall and deception and all that stuff, like the like time, there's this pastor Troy Brewer talks about like the reason that we have time is because of the fall, and so God started time so that we could be redeemed and go back to heaven, because like Satan and all of his angels, when they rebelled, didn't get the choice, right? Like they don't get to repent and return to God. Only humans like got that for some reason, I don't know why. But anyways, so it's like here on earth, it's like we're learning how to get into right relationship with God, and through that, like God shows us like through how we relate to other people. And so it's like learning in real time with each other how to be in a right relationship with someone. And God teaches us, but it's also so we can become like, it's called sanctification, so you can become more like God. It's part of the redemption. So it's like this whole journey of like you're born and you decide like, do I want to get in right relationship with God or not? Like even though it's not your fault you were born, it's not your fault that we live in a fallen world. Like none of that is our fault, right? And God doesn't blame us for that, but it's like, well, that's the cards we were dealt, and what are you going to do with it? You have the choice. Like how do you want to live your life, and do you want to become more like God, or do you want to become more like the devil? Like those are the options, like more selfish or more serving. And it's like every day, every choice you make, it's like one or the other. And so it's just like even psychology, I mean, they call it different things, they're like, oh, your higher self and your shadow, whatever. Like it's just different names, but it's like which side are you going to choose? And it's learning now with like the Lord, I'm like, oh, like I'm not Christ-like at all. Like I'm really not. Like when I look at like the Bible and how Jesus modeled himself, like I'm very far from that model. Um, but it's a journey and it's a process. And so the more that I've done that, it just reminds me like yes, relationships with people are important, but it's really the like you were saying relationship game. It's to teach us how to be more like God through how we interact with our world. And like will we make those choices to become like God? Like not like taking the power from him and become, like but like to embody who we are supposed to be if he's with us. So,
Nice. For sure. Yeah, cool. Um, I feel like I've shared what I want to share about codependency today. What about you?
yeah, I want to say that I feel I feel like we did, and something we're always working on, and I think it's just daily. I want to. One more thing I want to say is it changes. You're not gonna just always be in a secure style. Like you might relapse and be in an avoidant or codependent. Like you're gonna go and flow. We're human. Like we're never gonna be just perfect. Like that was only God is perfect, and so it's like this whole like you're gonna it's not a one and done, it's a journey. So it's just like, am I more secure today or was I more codependent? And it's like James Clear book Atomic Habits. It's like if you can get 1% better every day, like that's enough. So yeah.
Yep, for sure. You're right. Definitely fluctuates through the day to day. But yeah, it's just an opportunity to just get more clear, see where we are, see what's coming up for us, and how can we do better or do different. You know. So awesome. Well, we appreciate you guys all for joining us and watching the replay. Of course, as you know, there are links below in the description that you can check out, find us in different platforms. And that's all for me. So thank you guys.
Same time next week.
We'll see you there.